going down.
Hello, friends. Welcome once again to yet another episode of Daily English Classroom. Today we'll be discussing the poem The Ballad of Father Gilligan. The ballad is written by the renowned Irish poet and nationalist William Butler Yeats. A ballad is a simple narrative poem written in a simple language. The Ballad of Father Gilligan comprises of 12 stanzas of 4 lines each. The theme of the poem is the omnipresence of God and His sincere and everlasting love for mankind. The poem is about a miracle that happened in the life of Father Gilligan, an old priest in a parish.
Here is a reading of the poem The Ballad of Father Gilligan. The old priest Peter Gilligan was weary night and day, for half his flock were in their beds or under green swords lay. Once, while he nodded in a chair at the moth hour of the eve, another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve. I have no rest, nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die. And after cried he, God forgive, my body spake not I. He knelt, and kneeling on the chair, he prayed and fell asleep. And the moth hour went from the fields, and stars began to peep. They slowly into millions grew, and leaves shook in the wind, and God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind. Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. Maron, Maron, the man has died while I slept in the chair. He roused his horse out of its sleep and rode with little care. He rode now as he never rode, by rocky lane and fen. The sick man's wife opened the door. Father, you come again. And is the poor man dead? He cried. He died an hour ago. The old priest Peter Gilligan in grief swayed to and fro. When you were gone, he turned and died as merry as a bird. The old priest Peter Gilligan, he knelt him at that word. He who hath made the night of stars for souls who tire and bleed, set one of these great angels down to help me in my need. He who is wrapped in purple robes with planets in his care, had pity on the least of things asleep upon a chair. The old priest Peter Gilligan was weary night and day, for half his flock were in their beds or under green swords lay.
The first stanza describes the dilemma or the quandary, the difficulty faced by an old parish priest named Father Peter Gilligan. He was very tired with the passing of every day and night. Most of his parishioners were either sick or were already dead and buried owing to some unknown epidemic, some contagious disease.
Once, while he nodded in a chair at the moth hour of the eve, another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve.
In this stanza, the poet describes one evening when the moths came in swarms, the night flies came in swarms, the time they usually do. Father Gilligan was tired and he was almost asleep in his chair because of his overwork. At that time, he was called for. Someone came in search of him, for someone in his parish was in his deathbed, and his presence was needed to give the dying man his last rites. Father Gilligan was distracted and disturbed in mind.
I have no rest, nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die. And after cried he, God forgive, my body spake, not I.
In this stanza, the poet describes Father Gilligan saying, since his people kept dying every now and then, and since he is expected to be with them at their deathbed, he finds no rest. He is not happy and peaceful either. However, the next moment, he regrets having railed against his vocation, and so he kneels down to ask pardon of God. He says it was his weary body that had spoken, and not he himself.
He knelt and leaning on the chair, he prayed and fell asleep. And the motor went from the fields and stars began to peep.
In this stanza, to atone for what he had told and to ask pardon of God, Father Gilligan knelt himself on the floor with his hands folded in prayer. While he was praying, because of his tiredness and his famished state, he fell asleep right in the chair. The evening went by, and a few stars started appearing in the sky.
They slowly into millions grew, and leaves shook in the wind, and God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind.
In this stanza, the poet is full of praise for the beautiful universe created by God. The sky is starry, and the wind shook the leaves on the trees. It seemed as though God had decided to envelop or cover the entire universe in darkness and whisper words of soothing effect to mankind in the form of the rustling of leaves.
Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor.
In this stanza, the poet describes what happened in the morning. The sparrows had begun to chirp. The swarm of flies had once again appeared in the morning. Father Gilligan stood up straight, upright. Something disturbed his mind. Something came to his mind like a bolt from the blue.
Mavron, Mavron, the man has died while I slept in the chair. He roused his horse out of its sleep and rode with little care.
In this stanza, the poet says that Father Gilligan had realized that the man who had sent for him the previous night must have died while he was sleeping in his chair. This was enough to make the poor soul, the poor priest, go mad. He then woke his horse up and rode as fast as he could through the terrain, through the difficult terrain. He rode his horse in a reckless or careless manner.
He rode now as he never rode, by rocky lane and fen. The sick man's wife opened the door. Father, you come again.
In this stanza, the poet describes how Father Gilligan had ridden his horse through the still darkness of the night, through narrow lanes and marshy lands. At last, when he reached the sick man's house, his wife opened the door and she was surprised to see Father Gilligan again. She wondered why he had come again.
And is the poor man dead? He cried. He died an hour ago. The old priest, Peter Gilligan, in grief swayed to and fro.
In this stanza, we see Father Gilligan asking the sick man's wife whether the man had breathed his last. And on knowing that he had passed away an hour ago, the poor Father Gilligan was sorry for the dead man because he was not able to be near his deathbed and give him his last sacraments, the dying man's rites. Father Gilligan, in his famished state, he started to sway to and fro.
When you were gone, he turned and died as merry as a bird. The old priest Peter Gilligan, he knelt him at that word.
In this stanza, the poet says, the sick man's wife told Father Gilligan that after he had left, her husband died a happy death. He died as merry as a bird. On hearing this, Father Gilligan knelt down and he started thanking God for the benevolence he had shown to this poor soul.
He who hath made the night of stars, for souls who tire and bleed, send one of these great angels down to help me in my need.
In this stanza, we hear Father Gilligan speaking. He says that God had created the starry sky to comfort the sick and the dying. And the same God must have sent one of his angels in the form of Father Gilligan to the bedside of the dying man to help him in his need.
He who is wrapped in purple robes, with planets in his care, had pity on the least of things asleep upon a chair.
The last stanza, the 12th stanza, is a eulogy or praise of God. Father Gilligan continues to speak. He says that God is a king dressed in purple robes or dress, and all the planets are in his control. The Almighty God is omnipotent and omnipresent. That means he is all powerful and present everywhere. However, it was a miracle that he had shown mercy on one of his meager creatures as Father Gilligan while he was sleeping unawares in his chair. God showed mercy to help Father Gilligan. The ballad thus ends, reiterating God's omnipresence and grace in the lives of the faithful.